So the good news about today is that it is a very short lesson, but again, you want to make sure you pay attention to the first part I'm doing, which is the pre-teaching. Mainly because if you don't get this part down, then when we come back to the factoring stuff, it's going to cause you a lot of issues. So even if you're in a rush, just take your time. This video is not that long, and there's really not that much to worry about. But yesterday we began an example with where the signs were either both positive or both negatives, and we knew it because the values multiplied to be a positive number. In other words, it multiplied to be a positive 100 or a positive 80 or a positive whatever. And the only way you multiply to get a positive is if you have a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative to get that positive. Today what we're going to do to start out is take a brief look at how we handle problems where the numbers multiply to be a negative value. Because again, if they multiply to be a negative, the only way that works is if you have a negative times a positive or a positive times a negative, but either way the signs are different. So what we would be looking at is two numbers that multiply to be negative 72 and add to be 6. Ignoring the sign for a moment, let's just make sure we know how to find the tree for 72. So again, what we do is 72 divided by 1, 72 divided by 2, and as I said, you continue that pattern until the answer you get is smaller than the answer you type in. So 72 divided by 2, which is 36. 72 divided by 3. Again, this is just like a scavenger hunt, and that's what you have to be ready for once we get past these next few chapters and get into what's going on. It's not that you can't find the answer, it's that you have to have the patience to find the answer. And again, remember what I told you is that this part of algebra does not come into, and because you got a decimal, that means 5 doesn't work. But this part of algebra does not challenge how smart you are. It challenges how much you actually want to find the answer. How much are you willing to fight to get the answer that you're looking for? 72 divided by 7 does not go. 72 divided by 8 is 9. And the reason we can stop is because the next number we would check is 9, and 9 is already there. Now here is again where we have to be careful. If it multiplies to make a negative 72, that means that these two sides have to be different. Again, 1 times 72 is 72. Negative 1 times negative 72 is positive 72. So we know that this has to be different. And here's how you know. Or here's how you know what to do. If they add to be a positive 6, remember that the bigger number gets the sign. So since it adds to be a positive 6, it means that this big side, which is why you want your big numbers on one side, small numbers on the other one, has to be positive. Which means that if you want a negative 72, this side here has to be negative. And then you look to see which ones make 6, and of course that doesn't do it. That's 34, that's 21, that is 14. Here is your 6 right there. So negative 6 and positive 12 would be the two numbers that you would use. Again, it's not a tough process, but it's something that you're going to have time to work on over the next week or so to kind of get under control before we get to the ugly part of what's going on. And again, you want to make sure you know it, because what's going to happen is when we get to that part of the chapter where you have to know how to factor, if you don't know how to find the numbers, I really can't help you, but you have to know how to find the numbers. So again, be careful in terms of skipping over stuff like this, and make sure you're working on this skill because it's very important. So again, negative 45, ignore the negative for a moment, and I'm just going to do this in my head because I can, but if you can't, just get your calculator and do it that way. 1 times 45, 2 does not go, 3 goes times 15, 4 doesn't go, 5 times 9, 10, I'm sorry, 6 doesn't, 7 doesn't, 8 does not, and 9 is right here. And so what we do now is, again, we look and we say we know we want it to be a negative 45, which means the signs are different. We also know we want it to make a negative 12. Again, if it adds to make a negative 12, this means that my big side should be negative. But because I want a negative 45, it means that these should be positive. And again, the ones that make negative 12, 1 and negative 45 do not make 12, but 3 and negative 15 make your negative 12. And again, that's how you're going to work that out. Alright? So again, keep all that in mind whenever you get to your lesson credit and you start working through that stuff. But today what we're going to do is revisit the distributive property, and because today's and yesterday's material is more like review, there's going to be extra types of problems in your homework. Again, be sure to ask about any problems that you don't understand. We may not be using the material in that homework right now, but it doesn't mean it's something you should not try to learn, just because you have to make sure you get that part understood for whenever it pops back up. But this is easy enough where you remember that the person outside the parentheses wants to meet everyone on the inside of the parentheses. Also, what you might want to learn to do is multiply the number and count the or find the sign, figure out the sign. Let me slow down. determine the sign, multiply the number, and then count the variables. So in this case, I don't care about the sign because I know it's positive, but there's a 5 in this meeting, and there are 2 x's. Again, when you multiply, remember that the variables get added. That's what we learned in chapter 7. Then you do 5 times 9, which is plus, it's going to be positive, 45, and this meeting here has 1x because it's right there. That's what you have to be careful of. Alright? So again, it's kind of like a review from what we learned, I think, in the first chapter of algebra. This one here, when you multiply, you get 21 with 2 m's, because in this meeting there are 2 m's. 7 and m meet, both of those are positive, so you know it's going to be positive. Our number is going to be 7, and I have 2, 3 m's in that problem. So just be careful that you know what's going on with that. Alright? Most of what's going on over these next couple lessons is just making sure you minimize your mistakes. You're going to mess up a little bit on the homework, but as long as you fix your errors by the time you get to the quiz or test, you should be okay. Here, this is what I'm talking about. The sign, you got a positive times a negative, so it's going to be a negative 24 with 3 j's. Then you've got a positive times a negative, which is a negative 16 with 2 j's. And then you've got 8 times 4, which is a positive 32 with 1j. And again, if you need to put the parentheses with 8j meets 3j and whatever, go ahead. Again, as long as you're getting the right answer, really, that's all it comes down to. So again, just make sure you're doing that the right way and getting the right answer. Here you have 2 times 4, which is 8 with 2 y's, because there's only 2 y's in that meeting. This is going to be negative 6 with 3 y's. This is going to be negative 10 with 2 here, 2 there, so 4 y's. So putting what we learned yesterday together with what we learned today, and where you have to be careful on your quiz tomorrow, is understanding that the only time your variable changes is whenever you're multiplying. So whenever we had 3x plus 2y plus 3x plus 5y, these two do not go together to make 6x squared. They make 6x because we are adding. So again, remember there's a difference. This becomes 6x plus 7y, whereas if I was to do multiplication, that would be 9x squared or whatever it might be. So just be careful that you don't get that confused for tomorrow's quiz. But again, the good news is, and the reason why I'm doing it in the first place, if you do mess up on the quiz, you have an opportunity to fix it, to see your mistake, and to not make that mistake again, which then makes you a better mathematician or a better student. So just make sure you take advantage of that. Again, keep fighting back. All these grades are starting to go up. It's not going to be something that just kind of fixes within a day or two. So just keep coming in every day to do your best to make sure you're ready by the end of the night or by the end of the class period, and I think everything should be good. Your assignment is on Math Excel. The lesson credit is going to be 2 questions that want you to find the numbers, and then you should be okay. So good luck, and again, make sure you come and talk to me about what's going on. That is the only reason why I sit over there, is for you to come over and ask questions, so make sure you use that to the best of your advantage. Good luck.